All right, we're gonna quickly go over the texture sampler node. So we'll type in texture, we'll spell it right, drop this guy in, and I'm just gonna pipe this straight out to the surface. All right, so this is how you'll load most of your image textures. Under general image, you'll see similar controls that you're used to from C4D's image node. So I'm just gonna go ahead and drop the path to an image in here. And let's start with gamma overrides. So enable, disable, pretty self-explanatory. Usually you won't have to mess with anything here, but if you feel like your image is being read incorrectly, you can manually adjust the input gamma. So, of course, ticking sRGB is correct for this image, and therefore it looks correct. But we can also come down to gamma and change the gamma. So in this case, sRGB 2.2, but let's say that Redshift thinks this is in linear and it's not, and it's coming in looking wrong. We can just enter 0.4545 and that would correct it. In this case, it just makes it worse. All right, so let's disable that. Now UV has some pretty cool options. So we can actually go ahead and just drop a different UV tag into this dialog, and you'll see that my texture UV coordinates have changed. The second tag I just created manually, just went in and scooted the UVs over to the right a bit. And we can actually see that if the original tiling, if we uncheck these wrap U and wrap V boxes, you'll see on these two sides of this cube, the image has been shifted over to the right because that's where the image exists on the UV coordinates. So wrap U and wrap V simply extend the single UV tile out infinitely across your UV coordinate space. So mirror U and mirror V are there in case, let's say, this is not a nicely tiled image. We could mirror instead of wrapping this image, and then at least we don't see a hard edge at our UV boundary in the case that this were not a tiled image. So I'm just going to clear that channel out and leave wrap U and V off so we can see the effects of the UV remap down here. Scale does exactly as you'd expect here. Bringing your number up will shrink the UV tiling, and bringing the number down will scale the image up. And just a quick way to remember this is if we consider 1 to be just our direct UV mapping, then 0.5 means we're going to see half of the original image size, and therefore it will be much larger. Flip these back to 1 and move to offset. So offset simply moves the image along the UV space in both X and Y. So an offset of 0.5 in both directions means that we'll see half and half. And if I went down and turned wrap U and wrap V back on, you'll see that Redshift fills out all of that extra unaccounted for UV space. And the other quick thing I wanted to cover were multiplier and offset. So color multiplier simply multiplies the entire image by whatever color you add here. This is doing exactly the same thing as if we use a vector multiply, and I actually would prefer to do a multiply this way so that as soon as I open my shader graph, I can see what's going on. So just a second ago, I multiplied the entire image by red. So if this is R, G, and B, we'll just multiply it by red, and we have exactly the same result. And lastly, color offset is just performing an add operation to your image. And again, we can achieve the same effect by using an add node. In this case, let's say we want to add 0.2 or 20% luminance across the board, and you have effectively the same thing. If you want to see what the rest of that node does, go ahead and check out the MIP mapping section.